Welcome to the Webster World Report, a program sharing the expertise of Webster University's global system while the world is in crisis. Here's our host, Rick Rockwell.
This is the May 14th, 2021 edition of the Webster World Report. This time, we take a look back at the entire pandemic and share some of the conversations that moved listeners the most since it all began. But first, let's hear from newscaster Tiara Gray.
About 4,800 students worldwide graduated from Webster University last week. They were celebrated in 5 virtual commencement ceremonies due to the pandemic. Jackie Joyner Kersey gave the commencement speech and was given an honorary degree. She was named by Sports Illustrated as the best female athlete of the 20th century for winning 6 Olympic medals. She spoke of her struggles and perseverance and offered her life lessons to the graduates.
And even in your darkest moments, during this toughest time, we all had to pivot during COVID. But graduates, I can say, you have persevered.
The university also honored philanthropist Jenny Browning, a longtime friend of the university community, with an honorary degree. All the ceremonies can be seen on the university's YouTube channel. In April, the Webster Speaks program on race, equity, and inclusion focused on hate aimed against Asian Americans. Dr. Nicole Lee Johnson, a professor in Webster's School of Education on the main campus, shared her concerns.
So there are a lot of these racist slurs and racism that's really existing because of the COVID, and also for a lot of fear about the Asian community. I would say that definitely created a lot of crisis for us.
The next Webster Speaks program will focus on how policing is changing in the Black Lives Matter era. The program will be held on May 26th. Anyone worldwide can attend the Webster Speaks sessions. Registration information for this series can be found on the university's website. All of the Webster Speaks programs can be found on the university's YouTube channel. Webster University will formally mark Juneteenth this year, with an additional paid holiday for U.S. employees to be taken on Friday, June 18th, because Juneteenth falls on a Saturday this year. Juneteenth marks the day that enslaved people in the Confederacy officially learned of their liberation after the Civil War ended June 19, 1865. This year, Webster will hold numerous events during the week of June 14th to honor that day, and a task force will be assembled this fall to decide how Juneteenth will be celebrated by the university in the future. This is the second year that the university has given employees a paid holiday on this historic day. Webster University closed the academic year with 203 cases of COVID-19 reported on all of its campuses worldwide since the beginning of the pandemic. That number includes students, staff, and faculty. On the main campus in Webster Groves, 85 cases were reported since August of 2020, one of the lowest rates of infection among colleges and schools in the St. Louis area. Besides the main campus, Webster's operations in Geneva, Switzerland, and Accra, Ghana, ended the year offering some classes in person, some classes in hybrid settings, and many classes offered online. Webster's other campuses in Europe and Asia remain completely in online mode at this time. Webster Vienna Private University hosted a webinar in April to discuss the contributions of healthcare during the pandemic, with a focus on the development of vaccines to prevent COVID-19. Peter Llewellyn Davies, the CEO of Aperon Biologics, talked about healthcare business models and the importance of finding treatments for those who are infected with COVID-19.
I believe we need treatments. The vaccine will not be enough to combat this disease.
This webinar and other special virtual events are part of a time when Webster Vienna Private University is marking 40 years as part of Webster's global system. Webster University will be expanding its operations in Asia in the fall. The university signed an agreement with the PSB Academy of Singapore in April to jointly develop courses to be offered in Singapore and throughout PSB's network in Asia. PSB Academy currently has 12,000 students in a variety of locations and online. Webster professor Nicole Miller-Strutman will again be leading a bee census in the St. Louis region. She's recognized as an expert on bees and threats to bees. 4 years ago, she organized the Shutter Bee Project with photographers to aid in recording an annual census of bees in the St. Louis area. Shutter Bee is now a collaboration between Webster University, St. Louis University, the St. Louis Zoo, and the Missouri Botanical Garden. Those interested in volunteering should write to shutterbee@webster.edu. For the Webster World Report, I'm Tiara Gray.
Thanks, Tiara. This is the Webster World Report's final edition before we go on summer hiatus, so we wanted to take the opportunity to thank Tiara Gray, our newscaster, who just graduated from Webster and who will be going on to other jobs and marking other achievements. Thanks for all you've done for this program, Tiara. Also, thanks to all of our listeners. This program has accumulated thousands of listeners since its inception in 2020. We've attracted quite a few across the U.S., Canada, and Uzbekistan. So here's wishing all of our listeners well, wherever you may be around the globe. And now onto our program of listener favorites, interviews that proved to be popular with our global audience during the pandemic. As we finish up 61 weeks since the global coronavirus pandemic was declared, let's go back to our very first program. Here's an excerpt of an interview with Malika Baratova, Webster University's public relations executive in Tashkent at our campus in Uzbekistan, where she spoke to us via WebEx about week 2 of the lockdown there.
So it's week 2 of the official quarantine for universities, schools, and preschools in all of Uzbekistan. But it's only really the conclusion of the first week where citizens have been encouraged to stay inside. And as of a few days ago, we're not only encouraged, but we are mandated to stay inside unless we are going out for groceries or medicines. People have been reasonably good about it. There's not a lot of folks still, standing the important inside and dividing the spinning of the actions that they've traveled to other parts of Uzbekistan to be with their families during this time. So far, what we know about the students, especially our undergrads, is that they have adjusted quite well to studying remotely, and we've done what we could to keep them informed about the fact that it's important to stay inside, to wash their hands, to avoid, touching their faces, all of the points that have been broadcast so far. But I also think that the mass media of Uzbekistan and different, let's say, opinion leaders in the country, like bloggers, have done a really good job of highlighting these important behavior adjustments.
Later in May of 2020, we again heard from Tashkent. This time, Maggie Dankert, the Deputy Director of Webster Tashkent, related her stories of living in lockdown. She joined us via WebEx.
The lockdown here happened really quickly. So March 11th at 9 a.m., we had our first confirmed case. And then by 4 p.m. the same day, the government shut down all universities and schools. So I was actually at a TEDx event in Bukhara listening to one of our students give a talk, and we left and went back to Tashkent, and everything was in lockdown procedure. So students had 3 days to return to their home countries before all trains, buses, metros were shut down. Within a week, taxis were shut down. And then a few more days later, they actually said no more driving your own personal vehicle. Every store has been shut down except pharmacies and grocery stores. I have a armed National Guard member post outside of my apartment complex, and he basically asks me every time he sees me, "What are you doing outside?" And I have to say in very broken Russian, "Look at my dog. I'm giving her a walk." And then sometimes he smiles and lets me through. It's been, we have people in full gear coming and spraying and disinfecting all of the walkways and the sideways and the apartment entrances. We had a few people go into government quarantine, which means they were connected to someone who was sick. So there were camps set up outside of the major cities where they turned old shipping containers into apartment complexes, I guess you could say. And they were in this giant square in the middle of like this valley. And that was where you stayed. One of our faculty members he was coming home from Russia, and he and his family stayed there for 3 weeks. And it's a shipping container with a toilet and a stove. And everything is provided for you, whether it's, food or medicine or regular checkups multiple times a day. And then you are let go and they put you on a bus and drop you off kind of in the middle of town and hope that you get home because there's no metro, subway, bus, car. So you kind of walk home from where you are. But overall, I have generally felt more safe being in Uzbekistan than being maybe back in the United States, as an example. We are 2 months into our lockdown procedure, and we've only had approximately 2,500 confirmed cases of COVID-19 and less than 10 deaths, all of who were people who came from outside of Uzbekistan into the country. So while the lockdown and the quarantine procedures have been, maybe not something that as an American I would be used to experiencing, they have been effective. And we just got the announcement that they're going to hopefully be softening those procedures so that people can come back to work or go to restaurants or things like that. Yeah, it's been an interesting experience.
So I'm curious, if you're not able to go more than 100 meters outside of your apartment complex, then how do you get to the store? Or are you allowed to go to the store, or do the stores deliver? How does that work?
My grocery store is 2 blocks away. So it is just past the 100-meter mark. The pharmacy, there's like a pharmacy on every street corner. So it's one of those things that like every block has one of those. For the first couple of weeks, I was having food delivered to my house through like a private food service. But when the personal cars got made illegal, that got stopped. And instead now, what I've been trying to do is there is a white minivan that comes into the middle of my apartment complex, honks his horn very obnoxiously, but then he sells a bunch of produce and a bunch of like eggs and fresh milk. And there's a little bread stand, within my apartment complex. So most of the food I'm able to get like right outside my front door.
Coronavirus case numbers have certainly changed in a year. Currently, Uzbekistan has officially logged more than 94,000 cases of COVID-19 since the pandemic began. Many of our programs featured a nurse's perspective of the pandemic. Back in April of 2020, Professor Jody Spiess of Webster's nursing faculty joined the program to speak of her experience as a nurse and as a member of the university's COVID-19 task force. She spoke to us via Skype from Webster Groves.
And yes, working from home is so stressful, especially with having kids at home. I am experiencing that as well. But just doing our best to keep calm and happy and focusing on the positive as much as we can while following the rules. of the public health leaders.
I think the slogan you hear in the United States right now is facts, not fear. So I want to ask you how you might engage our students on this, because there's also been a lot of discussion about how young people interact with this. But the first person to die in the St. Louis city was someone who was 31 years old. There's an instance in Los Angeles of a teenager who got the virus and died. So we also, it's unusual that we have that happening, but what's the importance for our students as they deal with the health issues here?
So again, that this has to be taken very seriously. And as you said, I have seen fact, not fear, and I do love that. And what you just explained is fact. That those people did pass away and they were younger, and not much has been said about a health history, but I believe the death in St. Louis did not have a health history. So it just shows you that this virus is, it is not just hurting the old. It is helping, it is hurting all of us. One of the really rare things about this virus that we're having trouble wrapping our brains around is the random variability, which you just explained. Some get sick and they die quickly. Some get sick and they do fine. And at first it did seem it was only the elderly that were getting very ill, but we're seeing that is not completely the case, starting in Italy and now in the United States. So young people just need to take it as seriously as anyone else. Think about it as protecting your mom, your grandma, your grandpa, your dad, or really yourself, because this virus is not discriminating.
We also heard from one of our nursing students, Charlie Johnson, a registered nurse pursuing a Master's of Science in Nursing. He joined us from St. Louis, Missouri via WebEx.
I just wanted to share that as a nurse, and we're just not in this alone. I want to say society and media has given a lot of attaboys to healthcare professions, and we're out here doing a good thing. But I say it takes everyone to fight this pandemic. And I just want to say to everyone, just go through and do your part. We'll get through this. There's light at the end of the tunnel, and we will get through this soon.
That is something. You mentioned that this is historic, that most folks have never lived through anything like this in their lives. And we're also seeing this appreciation for nurses in a way that I don't think we've seen perhaps ever before. There are military flyovers and other things to honor first responders. What is your reaction to this historic change in honoring the good work that you're doing?
Oh, I think it's amazing. I know that the nurses really appreciate, they really appreciate the outpouring of affection and gratitude from folks because they are just doing amazing work around this COVID. Looking forward, I really hope this sets a platform for other issues that we see in our society, like homelessness, mental health, education. The way that we've come together as a community is amazing, and I just hope it just keeps going forward.
When we come back, more excerpts from listeners' favorite programs of the Webster World Report, including how the pandemic has changed international relations and diplomacy. Stay with us.
Regardless of your financial circumstances, your dream to attend a private college is possible. At Webster University, we've provided an educational environment accessible to all for more than a century. That's why last year, we awarded over $1.2 million in a variety of scholarship opportunities for incoming freshmen, transfer students, and active military. Let us help you fund a brighter future. Visit webster.edu/financial aid.
When you visit Webster Athens, one word comes to mind: value. Study in Greece at Webster Athens and get an unparalleled educational experience through various innovative undergraduate, graduate, and study abroad programs. The campus of Webster Athens lies right below the Acropolis at the confluence of Europe, Asia, and Africa. To join our learning community, email athensadmissions@webster.edu or visit www.webster.edu.gr.
Welcome back to the Webster World Report. Now, excerpts from our hour-long special from September of 2020, where we assembled a global panel of expert Webster faculty members across 3 continents. All joined the program via Cisco WebEx, beginning with Kelly Kate Pease, an international relations professor based on the main campus in Webster Groves.
And pandemics quickly stopped globalization, as we're seeing now, and these aren't new. And you could argue that really since the 2008 financial crisis, particularly because the driving of the economy, of the world economy, was based on sort of liberal, capitalist, neoclassical values, that has broken down since 2008, and it's never been replaced with anything else.
And now Professor Jozef Batora from Webster Vienna Private University.
Yeah, and to add to that, to the whole issue of norms breaking down, I think in one particular area, or there may be some areas in which globalization is actually accelerated. And one of these areas is privatization of warfare. And what you see over the last half a year, last couple of months, is an increase in the number of, or last couple of years, in fact, but it has been accelerated over the last couple of months, is the presence of private military companies in conflicts worldwide. Places like Libya, for instance, where companies from were connected to the Russian government. They're not Russian in the sense of in the sense of where they're actually based and headquartered, but they're companies based out of, let's say, Argentina and Hong Kong would be deploying private contractors out to fighting conflicts in places like Libya, like Ukraine, like Syria. And in this area, this has in fact increased. So, U.S. AFRICOM, African Command, has been warning about the increasing presence of these kinds of troops in places like Libya and elsewhere around Africa. And so here we see a pattern where Russia and other countries, other states, have actually been, have actually been tapping into resources of the market and of global transactions, and in fact increasing their presence around the world in various areas in a rather cost-efficient way. So there may be areas in which, and of course that leads to what Kelly Kate was describing as, the norms breaking down, because this really challenges the whole idea of what exactly is war and to what extent can states, guarantee some kind of an international liberal order. So that I think is a major challenge. So there may be some horizontal areas in which globalization is actually accelerating, and it may be leading us towards a new type of an order. One could call it a neo-medieval order, where you have all kinds of entities in conflicts, all kinds of sources of authority. So this is for us as IR scholars, this is an enormously exciting time.
So Jozef, if I could follow on that, please. I wonder, this program is going live on the 19th anniversary of the September 11th attacks. Most people would agree that that was a paradigm shift for the world. What you're talking about also sounds like a paradigm shift. I don't know that it's being accelerated or caused by the pandemic. Sounds like acceleration there. But why are we seeing this paradigm shift?
Well, I think there are several reasons and several sources of that shift that's been going on since the end of the Cold War. If we're talking about privatization of warfare and the deployment of private companies actually conducting combat on behalf of states, and also other kinds of security operations on behalf of states in collaboration with states, but also with international organizations, with private businesses, and so on. So the sources of this transformation over the last 30 years are several. One of them is the overall cuts in state budgets for defense. So there have been enormous cuts since the end of the Cold War, where a lot of resources became available, and there's a lot of capital also that's available to fund these kinds of operations. Plus, there have been some legal changes in some countries. It began in the United States, but also the UK and other Western governments have followed up with relatively liberal regulation in terms of privatizing these kinds of services. And then we are now we have had other countries like Russia and China following up in the footsteps of the US and the UK. While the US and the UK have introduced a lot of regulation over the last 10 years, in particular after some of the scandals in places like Abu Ghraib, but also after Nisour Square in Baghdad, where one of the private military companies, Blackwater in this case, have shot 17 civilians. And this was really a scandal. When this got on the agenda, of course, a lot of regulation has been introduced in the United States, but also in other Western countries, including some international regimes in the area of private military companies. But this is, of course, not really followed by Russia, by China, by Saudi Arabia, a number of other countries who are active here. So what this provides to governments is an attractive option of plausible deniability, of presence in conflict zones without actually taking full responsibility. And we see that pattern in particular in Russia, who have been actively involved in conflicts in Syria, Eastern Ukraine, Libya, and they have this has enabled them to be, as I said, present, but not necessarily responsible and accountable for what's really happening. And this is really a neo-medieval kind of an environment, you could say, because obviously mercenaries this is one of the oldest professions, and in that sense it's not an entirely new thing. The new thing about it, though, is the corporate structure of these companies and their presence on stock markets. Many of them are. They're actually paying taxes. They're being run by business elites, regular business school types, in combination with former military officers and special forces officers and so on. So what really happens here is a combination. I call them interstitial organizations in my research, and so they're organizations emerging in the interstices between various fields, such as war, such as diplomacy, such as development aid, and so on. And really, this combination leads to all kinds of transformation dynamics in terms of how you organize war and warfare, as well as major challenges to the norms of warfare in world politics.
With the pandemic, we have an opportunity, both state and non-state actors, to rethink how we're doing things. And when the globalization had stopped in the past, we think of after World War I, after World War II, it is because of fundamental flaws within the system. And we have several fundamental flaws facing the world today. One is inequality. Okay, we have gross inequality, and something has to be done, or the type of economic growth is unsustainable. Okay, and the next sort of crisis or flaw that we have is that we're facing climate change. Just like we saw down the road, we all knew intellectually a pandemic was possible that could shut everything down. We all talked about it. But when it actually happened, everybody's like shocked, and everybody just resorted back to sort of parochial approaches, particularly the United States. And climate change is coming as well.
That concludes our review of listener favorites from the pandemic. Thanks for listening to our podcast. As we continue to deal with the coronavirus, you can find the university's COVID-19 resource pages at webster.edu/COVID-19. And if you have a comment about the program, you can find us at covid19@webster.edu. That address again is covid19@webster.edu. Webster World Report is available on Apple Podcasts, Buzzsprout, and of course SoundCloud. You can also hear the program on your smart speaker or wherever you find your podcasts. Thanks for joining us. The Webster World Report is produced by students, staff, and faculty at Webster University. For announcer Tara Graves, news reporter Tiara Gray, and associate producer Jennifer Gamich, I'm Rick Rockwell. Stay healthy and safe.
The The Webster World Report is produced by the Global Marketing and Communications Division of Webster University and through the facilities and copyright support of Webster School of Communications. This program is copyright 2021.